Alright, King Killers, on this episode we're covering the prologue in Chapter 1. We're going to discuss A Silence of Three Parts, and we're going to learn about a horrifying, just gross trait that runs rampant in Tim's family, and then we'll discuss my assumed mastery of the craft of writing. Then we move into the origin story of the Tinkers. We'll get introduced to the Chandrian, Taberlin, the bar regulars, and Tim and Fitz have some terrible email ideas to send to Rothfuss. And finally, we finish by learning about our love of spiders, talk about what's in the box, and I let some of you know if you've been banned from listening to any more of these episodes. So if you make the cut, sit back and enjoy.
Devil wanna flee, I got a scope zoomed in on the sniper in the trees. What's around? If the devil wanna flee, I got a scope zoomed in on the sniper in the
trees. Welcome, killers, to the inauguration of the utmost killer broadcast, King Killer Podcast. Tonight we have with us the biggest fan, El Capitan, man with the plan, Dan. Say what's up, Dan.
What's going on, man?
And coming at you all the way from the West Coast, spreading that California love, Big Pimpin', Slim with the tilted brim. What's his Mother Hubbard name? Tim, say hi.
Hello, how we doing?
All right, and I'm the other guy called Fitz. So let's dig in, boys. The prologue starts out. It's called A Silence of Three Parts. It's nighttime at the Waystone Inn. Part 1, a hollow echoing quiet. Of course, no music. Part 2, the silence between two men not speaking of some obvious trouble. Part 3, coach silence. That of a man waiting to die. Now, guys, there may or may not be a lot there, but as I'm going through this for the first time, it really hooked me in and got me really excited. Shows Patrick's deep style. What'd you guys think?
It's a real kind of, it's very different from the traditional prologue you're going to get in a book. I've not read a prologue that is like that. It's very poetic. It's not, none of the rest of the book is written in this style, so it's a little disorienting. It's very well written and cleverly written, but it's very different when you're going into it. Like, first time I read it, I was like, what the fuck am I reading? And I was like, I hope the rest of the book is not going to be like this, but it's good, but this is like 600-page book. I mean, I don't know if I can hang in for 600 pages, but it's really cleverly done, and for a page and a half, you know, it's worth the price of admission.
If you take out the title and the space for the title, it's a page.
Yeah,
and it's tremendous. The mood he's able to set, how he sets the scene, how he even builds the world out in such a small space of words. And you're right; it's very poetic. It's extremely artfully done. But yeah, well, and one thing, reading books, I like when I see a shorter prologue. Frankly, a lot of times when you see a 30-page prologue, I'm kind of, man, I might just skip this fucking thing. It's just, it's too much sometimes, you know. But yeah, it's tremendous at how he sets the scene. I mean, we can get into it, but yeah, just on surface level, and just mentioning it, it's everything. Every single word is absolutely vital, and it's a page.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's really, I think it gets better with more reads as well, because you kind of know what he's setting everything up for. But even within his own, what he's creating on the page, he creates these different hooks and sort of like ballast that come back on one another.
Yeah, and I mean, like your typical prologue, it's a lot of times it sets the scene for like who the behind the scenes big enemies are, the big players. There's a ton of books that they mention characters that are like in a series, prologues for series. A lot of times they set the stage for these big characters that, you know, usually you're not going to find out much about them until later on in the books, or even sometimes you go books before you really find out who these people are. But this is completely different. I mean, there's just nothing like it.
A lot of times books that are of this genre, I would imagine, or at least pieces I've read, it's all world building. The prologue is like setting a scene of where you're going to be. This is like setting the mood of where you're going to be in the beginning, and where Coates at, and that's where we jump off point, which is kind of depressing, but it's really like cerebrally or psychologically interesting starting point.
Yeah, not only the mood, Tim. I think it kind of sets the scene for how it's going to be written. It's another one of these where you really can feel the depths of what he's trying to say, but you know that there's more to it. You guys sensing that there's a lot more to what he's writing, but you don't. But you really, at this point, you have no idea what you're in for.
Yeah, and especially when you're going back through it, a second time, or a 10th or 11th time, you notice there's more built into it. His books are really good for the multiple rereads, because he writes chapters where they're good on their own, they stand on their own, but then after you've read the books and you kind of understand where things are going, then when you go back through them, you see kind of how many pieces play into parts that are going to come up in the book further on. So for example, if there had been music, but no, of course there was no music. So the first time through it, it's like, well, yeah, there's no music because it's a silence. There's silence. So there's not going to be music playing in silence. But then when you go through and you read the books and you realize how important music is to Kavoth, then you're like, well, now it takes on a weightier meaning to it. It's, of course, there's no music, but then it's like, well, what happened to the music? Then you start asking questions. It's not just some obvious thing anymore. Now it's like, well, what happened to him? Why doesn't he sing anymore? Because we know how important music is to him for the rest of the story.
Yeah, it's not right here where he starts talking about how Kavoth is humming, and if he had known that he was humming, he would have stopped. We haven't gotten that far.
I think that's in chapter 1.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it ties in.
I'm jumping ahead.
No, but it ties in exactly with the mood they're setting here. I mean, I love how it's not just it was silent. It's saying if there were wind, it would have, if there were wind, you would hear the sign creaking, or if there were people outside, if there was a crowd in there, it would be like this. There might be laughter. There might be this. There's none of it. And then they just keep deepening and deepening. And you don't think it, when you read, it was a silent room. You could just say that. You could just say the room was silent. But you add in all these things that you're taking away that equal the silence. You're up in the ante to a massive degree. And then it's not just silence, it's oppressing silence.
So the first silence is that no one's in there. It's an echoing, it's blowing through the place, and there's nothing, and that's part of the silence. And then the second part, there's a couple guys in the Waystone Inn, and they're talking, or they're drinking mostly. And the silence there is that they're not talking about the troubles that are going on in the town, because so right away we're shown that second silence is there's a trouble in the town that they don't want to talk about it, whatever that might be at this point. And then the third silence, it says it's his own, it's Coates' silence, and the description of what that silence is. Why it's Coates? It's an enveloping silence. It has to do with his own feelings that he knows he's going to die.
Yeah, and you get the part. I almost stopped reading because when I read, he had true red hair, and I read, you get the sense that the main character is going to be a ginger. There's at that point you just want to put the book down, move on, find something else.
Well, it would make sense that he's waiting to die because he's lacking a soul, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. He's a soulless ginger.
Yeah, as is both my brothers and my mother and both my grandmothers. I
find that gingers are a wild card. I try to keep them out of my life. So.
The point that with what Fitz was saying, two men not talking about something. They drank with quiet determination, avoiding serious discussions. It's chock full, man. It's absolutely so what I was talking about earlier, where he sort of builds on what he's even doing in this page. That second silence makes an alloy of sorts, a counterpoint. So he's actually talking about how these are all interconnected silences and how they're interdependent on one another. It's not just that he's like a depressed, dude. He's holding some serious weight.
It really sets stage for there's just an ominous feeling to it, so that when you're moving into that first chapter and you start getting into the world, you've already set the stage that shit's not right in this world from Jump Street. You know that there's at least something wrong with this bar or this character, and then once he kind of starts little fleshing it out, that it's something wrong with the world.
I will say it's a ballsy prologue, because you kind of read it and it's not. I'm not necessarily amped for the next the next page.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, this better get to something somewhat quick. I mean, I appreciate what he's doing now, but trying to put myself in the shoes of a first read through, it's good that it's a page, because
Yeah.
I'm close enough to a first read through to remember. I was totally drawn in. I didn't feel like I was going to be swimming or anything like that. It was like I knew it was going to be deep, but I was ready to delve in. I to an extent, I fully understood what he was saying without, understanding the depths of it. I just thought, I remember thinking how well written it was, and it really kind of just threw that line out and kind of hooked me. It jigged that bait, and I bit, because it was deep and it was interesting already, I thought. And if I can go on to chapter 1.
Well, hang on real quick. I just wanted
to
jump on that, because something that should be said after what I just talked some shit here, to be able to create an oppressive feeling and do it in an intense way at the same time, that's quite an accomplishment, because it is intense. I mean, the feeling and everything he's talking about has an intensity to it, and what he's talking about is a deepened silence. To be able to make that emotionally charged is that's an accomplishment, man. He's good, this guy, at the writing.
He's a really good writer. He's able to really demonstrate his wordsmith skills right off the bat in this prologue. Now, one of the differences with you guys, you had people telling you got to read these books; they're fucking amazing. So even when you go in there and you kind of read that writing, you're already coming from a place like, I've heard these books are awesome. I came into this just looking for another series to read, and I just saw mention of it, but I didn't hear anything about it. So like when I'm coming in, I'm like, well, yeah, it's clearly, this guy's a talented wordsmith and all that, but then part of me was also like, well, I hope the whole book is not this flowery, this totally different thing. But then you get into the story and it's like, okay, well, this guy once he gets that great, then it just becomes a great prologue, because it's short, it does its thing, and then once he moves into the story, you're like, okay, this guy's a fucking master.
Yeah, and while the prologue, does kind of foreshadow the oppressive nature of Kvothe's story, it's not like that. It's not just a melancholy kind of story. It's exciting the whole time.
It's got everything.
Yeah.
It's got everything.
But it does foreshadow what the overall story is for Kvothe. It's, obviously we're back to the end of the story in chapter 1 at the Waystone Inn, where Kvothe has had shit luck and shit life, and now he's in hiding. So
the last sentence, it was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. That cut flower. I've never heard someone say that. You know what I mean? Like,
should we take that literally, you think? Like,
cut
flower?
I was just trying to, when I just read it like last night, I was trying to break it down, and I'm thinking, all right, so that's not a word I've ever heard. I've never heard. I know what I'm envisioning. Okay, so patient exact. So what would a cut flower be? It would be I don't know if it's exact. It seems distinct. It's an absolute, right? So cut flower. It's a beautiful thing. Cut, dead. It's not going to continue, right?
Yeah.
There may be a bit of shame in that, perhaps. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I started to
I hear you.
think into it because it's.
I tried to think into it the same way, Tim, and for the same reasons, because it caught me off guard. Like, what does that even mean? And so when I started to think a little bit harder about it, what I came to was that it was like a quick truncation, like a snap trunk. You know, like how would you cut a flower? What is cut flower? So however his death or that silence is, it's quick and full, I guess is the only way what I came to was that it was a quick and sudden and full slice off of it, and immediate death.
Well, it's quite a way. It's quite a way to say it, right?
It is.
I mean, I thought it's a cool sounding sentence, but yeah, when I try to break it down literally, like, what the fuck's a cut flower sound? I don't even I'm just thinking of like someone snipping a rose petal, or like, you know, Mr. Miyagi cutting his fucking stupid bonsai tree.
Stupid.
But like, that's a sound. Like, I don't even. What do you mean? Like, it's something when I try to think into it too literally, then it's like, well, no, that takes away from the coolness. So I'm gonna stop thinking about it literally and just enjoy the sentence.
It's playing on that poetic side. You know, he does that every now and then. He likes to, I mean, and writers do that. They like to play with words. I mean, that's what the whole book is, right? So I like it. You get little gems like that every now and then from certain authors. They always jump out at me.
I don't have nothing else on that chapter, so I don't know if you guys do, bring them up, or we can move on.
Do you want to slander any other colors of hair or any other races of?
No, just redheads, man.
Okay. Just want to give you the floor,
to let you guys. You know, I like to let the redheads know where they stand right off the bat. I don't want them getting into like episode 5 before they find out my true feelings.
Any other verbiage, Dan, that you just let go right over your head and quit thinking about as soon as it came out?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Everything else makes perfect sense for me. Like, I'm on that same tip as him. Like, you know, that superior writing talent. That would be me. I don't write, but I imagine that if I did write, it would be on that same level.
I think so, Dan. All right, moving on. So, Chapter 1, A Place for Demons, opens with Old Cobb telling the story of Taborlin the Great to a few others at the Waystone Inn. Halfway through, Carter busts in, having just been attacked by a Skraeling. It killed his horse, and I think he killed it by stomping on it, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Coat puts an iron shim into it, and it sizzles, and so everybody at the bar thinks it's a demon. Coat closes up the bar that night and heads up to his room where we first meet Bast, Coat's student. Coat tells Bast about the Skrael, and then Bast leaves as Coat kind of tries to go to sleep, and he tries to avoid looking at a trunk that's in his room, his thrice-locked box. So then the next night at the inn, we find out that the kingdom is at war, times are hard, and the roads are bad. So what'd you guys think about that first chapter? It was a lot longer than that.
Yeah, it's a good long introduction after the prologue. And right off the bat, you get kind of a big theme that's going to be in the books, is a story within a story. Old Cobb, the bar regulars, which I like. I love these guys. Like, I feel like if I was living in that town, in this super small town, they all seem to be kind of farmers working the land. And then after a hard day's work, they go and just kind of chill at the bar, get some food, and tell stories. Like, I feel like I'd be hanging out with, you know, Old Cobb and, you know, Jake and Shep and Graham and Aaron and all them, Carter. I feel like that would be my crew. Although I think I like Old Cobb in the story, but I'm fairly certain that if I hung out with him, that I would eventually grow to hate that dude and his feeling like he's the greatest storyteller ever, but
yeah, like
he gets all the stories wrong. Yeah. He gets them all wrong.
Yeah. He actually sounds quite a bit like you just described yourself. So you probably just not drawn to people who are like you. But
who's telling this story, me or you two?
he does that. He does that all the time. He does that quite a bit. I mean, repeatedly throughout the story, where it's like, oh, if you just want to go on with it,
No, go
he
ahead.
just
You tell it. You
runs
tell it.
roughshod over everybody. He's kind of a. But yes, in the story, he's necessary and he serves his purpose. But yeah, he's definitely a little know-it-all type jackass, which annoys the piss out of me.
Hey, he's funny to read about. I like reading about him, but then I picture myself like, man, if I had to hang out with this guy for like year after year, he would grate on me after a while.
Yeah,
But
great.
I enjoy him as a character in the story. Like, he makes me laugh.
So right away, you kind of feel like Coat knows something. You get the sense that as he's listening to the story, I think right away he's correcting people, correcting different paraphrases, and he knows the story already. I think they say Cobb's telling the story that he's heard 100 times. You already
He doesn't correct him on that story. He corrects him on the Tinkers.
Yeah, it's a little later.
But before we get into like Coat jumping in, there's some cool shit, because in the story that Cobb is telling, we get lamps on the wall were burning blue, so we get blue flame. This a major sign of the Chandrian. On the third page of the book, right off the bat, we're getting a Chandrian sign from Jump Street in a story about a story that's going to be about the Chandrian largely, and you get them from Jump Street.
Yeah.
Then you get Taberlin, where he needed to escape, but when he looked around, he saw a cell had no door, no windows, all around him nothing but smooth, hard stone. It was a cell no man had ever escaped, but Taberlin knew the name of all things, and so all things were his to command. He said to the stone, "Break," and the stone broke. The wall tore like a piece of paper, and through that hole, Taberlin could see the sky and breathe the sweet spring air. He stepped to the edge, looked down, and without a second thought, he stepped out into the open air. So again, like, we get the Chandrian right off the bat, and then we get Taberlin using naming right off the bat, using magic. It's a story that mirrors what happens with Kavoth and Elodin, when Elodin takes him to the rookery, and Elodin breaks the glass open, and then tells Kavoth to jump, and Kavoth absurdly jumps, and Elodin watches him fall all the way to the ground and jack himself up, and just this look of astonishment, like, dude, I cannot believe you're that freaking stupid. You actually jumped, you crazy, crazy person. So you get a lot of mirroring right off the bat.
Sorry, I'm just remembering the story, and that part's really interesting. But the part that it correlates to where Elodin tells him to jump off, just prior to that, when doesn't Elodin like make that wall vanish or something?
He commands the wall to break, and it breaks, and then
turns into sand or something.
Yeah, like the wall kind of falls through, and then there was like copper interweaved in between the bricks or the stone or whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it. But whatever else was there was like copper, like spider webbed in the stone or whatever that he made break. And then he took like a chair or broom or something and smashed all that away.
Okay.
And then he told Kavoth to jump, and Kavoth jumps and smugly thinks that Elodin is going to call the name of the wind and bring him to the ground safely, and Elodin just looks at him like he's the dumbest person he's ever met in his life.
And he tells him so later on.
Yeah, it's great. And then he's like, well, maybe this isn't a great idea having this guy teach me. First lesson, I'm already jacking myself up. And we get a story that mirrors that, on one of the first pages of the book, which is pretty... It just shows you like where Rothfuss is going to take us in the reread. So much of all this stuff mirrors things that are going to happen later on, and it's just a consistent theme throughout.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, really quickly, we get the Chandrian is mentioned in the first like 5 paragraphs. We even hear the Chandrian referred to, and the naming on additional read-throughs, we figure out how the magic in the world works, right? It's in the names of things. It's knowing the names of things, being able to command them, which is, that's it's really awesome. Like when I just read it through last night, you grow to appreciate that, okay, I'm going to have a book where magic exists in the world. How the hell does it work, right? You got to think of how's this going to function? How's it going to work? And the idea of being able to control, it's not really controlling matter as much as, you just understand things and then you get to command them. It's fucking interesting. So it's subtly put here, obviously, and you don't really know exactly what they're talking about through Taborlin's story, but it's there.
Yeah, you get introduced to magic. You have no idea what naming is, but yeah, then when you go back through and you understand naming more throughout 2 books, then when you see that magic and it's...
Hey Dan, when's the next time that we hear about Taborlin the Great? And do we hear that story or more bits and pieces of that story at all? I don't remember.
Yeah, they come back to it. We get a lot of mentions. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm fairly certain before we get out of the first 10 chapters, we're going to hear more about Taborlin. But just off the top of my head, I can't remember. I'd have to go back through. But we're going to get a ton. Taborlin's mentioned numerous times throughout both books. Old Cobb likes to tell stories about Taborlin. It's clear that he's one of these heroic figures people like to tell stories about, same as Kvothe, and same as Oren Velsider is another one that people seem to like to tell stories about. But yeah, he's a huge heroic figure, and just from this story we learn a little bit about him. Like when he gets it's like, so Taborlin fell, but he did not despair, for he knew the name of the wind, so the wind obeyed. But then it also talks about, and when he got to the ground and felt his side where they stabbed him, he saw that it weren't hardly a scratch. Now maybe it was just a piece of luck. Cobb tapped the side of his nose knowingly, or maybe it had something to do with the amulet he was wearing under his shirt. There's 2 parts to that. One is the stabbing, that it just barely left a scratch, mirrors after Kvothe leaves Adimre and he comes upon the fake Rue troop, people who killed the Rue and were pretending to be them, and they were raping those 2 girls. When he saves them, one of the guys kind of jumps out at him and is able to stab him, and he thinks it was a kill shot. He thinks he got stabbed in the gut and he's going to bleed out and he's going to die from this wound. And then when he finally gets a chance to check it, it was just a scratch. It didn't hit her cloak, Felurian's cloak that he had gotten, that saved his life. And so we get a similar thing with Taborlin. It's another mirroring where Taborlin comes into play with him in the future as well. His stories are very similar. But beyond that, the amulet that they talk about is more than likely it's either a Graham or a Gilder. So it's possible that Taborlin was a member of the university, an arcanist. Because he even talks about later on that it was cold to the touch, which is, all the arcanists wear that gilder, that when you touch it, it like jars your hand, numbs your hand. And so he's got something similar. They don't know what it is when they're telling the stories, but obviously, we do when we go back through.
Well, and that's perfect too, because people not knowing would call it an amulet, right? Because that gives it more mystery. They don't really understand it, right? There was something there that I thought was really cool about Coat, where, they're talking about him knowing the stars and everything, revealing that he's like worldly, he's kind of more learned. We get that also when he corrects their limerick about tinkers, right? So he comes in, he sort of corrects what they're saying, so we get a little bit more about him. But then also that limerick being there is huge too, because like you were saying before, this story is about stories inside of stories. The world is very intertwined. I mean, it's that, it's not mythology, it's their history, right? It lives through their stories, which it's really great. I mean, it's loaded with, obviously it's the first chapter, it's going to be loaded with world building because that's everything it's doing. But
speaking of world building, that's that first mention of Tinkers too, where they say that Taborlin the Great had visited a Tinker a couple nights before, where he got that amulet for being nice to the Tinker, sharing his dinner.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they bring them up right off the bat, and then we'll meet one here, and shortly. After, or wait, do we meet the Tinkers in this chapter, or is that later on in the book?
I think that's
No, we don't meet them in this chapter. They don't come in. Well, I'll bring up a couple things about Tinkers. Like, first off, when they start talking about the Tinkers, they say the little limerick about them. It was he jumps in and he corrects their misconception of what the saying is about the Tinkers. So he goes, the innkeeper spoke up for the first time that night. Actually, you're missing more than half, he said, standing in the doorway behind the bar. A tinker's debt is always paid, once for any simple trade, twice for freely given aid, thrice for any insult made. So I have a little bit of a theory, like kind of one of the first things I wanted to really dive deep into is who are the Tinkers? I'll give you guys like a couple examples of what makes me really interested in the Tinkers. Like you have Kvothe's first interaction with the Tinker in the books. Beyond just this, he jumps in with the story and kind of gives a little bit of a saying about them. When he goes to Trebon and he is looking for the Chandrian, so the chapters where he runs into the Dracus and he runs into the aftermath of what the Chandrian did to the Mothin farm or whatever it was called.
Yeah, he's with Denna.
Know what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
So he's offered by that Tinker, he's offered a bottle of brand, wine, rope, blanket, and he takes the bottle of brand, takes the blanket, he takes the shirt, and 3 jots. So he uses the blanket for Denna. The brand helped him to get that bumpkin dude, Shim, got him to talk about what was going on in the woods, about the blue flames and that kind of stuff that he kept seeing. And then he did not take the strawberry wine. Is that what it was? Yeah, strawberry wine. Denna wanted that wine, and then also he didn't take the rope. And Denna had an idea for how to kill the Dracus was to put the dinner resin in a bucket and hang it over the edge of a cliff with rope, and that Dracus would have went and tried to get that resin and fell off the cliff and hopefully fell to its death. But he didn't take the rope, he didn't take the wine, and both those things would have came into play, especially the rope, pivotally for the story. The things he did take also came into play. Then the second time he runs into a Tinker is when he's leaving the Mayor's City to join Tempe and Martin and Hespe and Dedan to go hunt the bandits. Let me see what he was offered: candles and wax for his boot. He took the candles and used them to make moments. He didn't take the wax for his boots, and his boots were soaked, and he came back to regret that decision. And so every time he meets a Tinker, what they freely just tell him, hey, you should take this, or they offer it to him, like, what about this? When he takes it, it plays a significant part. It helps him in some way. When he doesn't take it, it bites him in the ass.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting to me about those circumstances too is he's using logical reasoning why he takes what he takes, and you can't really refute his reasoning on those choices, which to me even deepens further what the Tinker's ability. Like it's almost like the Amir have this ability to, I don't know, access the future or foresee circumstances.
What's the other? How many other Tinkers do we come across in the story, Dan? I mean,
that's it. Other than the Tinker that is in the town, in a like on chapter 3, that's just in the town with that traveling group.
Isn't
Kvothe doesn't have any direct conversations with Tinkers.
Isn't Ben a Tinker?
He's an arcanist. Like, I mean, you could call him a Tinker, and like he's a chemist, and he's a brewer, and he's a bit of everything, but he's not like an actual just tinker.
What about
he's a bit of everything because he's an arcanist is what he describes himself as.
What about Ajax? Doesn't he have a run-in with a Tinker?
Yes, Ajax in the story that Hespe tells, there is a Tinker involved in that, but there's nothing directly related to, as far as like it's a totally different dynamic than Kavoth with the Tinkers, because they make a bet with each other, and he ends up taking all his goods. But there's nothing to there's no clue that you could derive from Jax and the Tinker that he meets, but you can derive some clues from Kavoth's meeting. Those are the two that are in story. They're not stories within a story. Those are actually in story that we meet Tinkers up live, close and personal. These are the only two times.
First-hand accounts, basically.
Yes.
I remember what you're talking about, Dan, where the Tinkers come into the bar here in a few chapters. Is that right?
Yeah.
With the traveling
into the town.
There's just an offhand mention of them.
Okay.
They don't dive into
Yeah,
them.
and they don't sell anything or anything?
He's offering goods, but there's nothing. There's no direct conversation with the Tinkers. You can't really derive anything from it. But the more important aspect of them is that they seem to either have a knack where if they tell you you're going to need something, you're going to need it, and they just have a knack and ability to tell you what you're going to need, that they don't even have to think about it. They just tell you you're going to need it. You're going to need it. And it's just a knack, like Trip's able to roll sevens. They're able to tell you what you're going to need. So it could be a knack, or they have some kind of clairvoyance, and they are trying to guide you in the right direction. And maybe that's why they're offended when you don't take them up on their offer, and they kind of are like, you're a fucking idiot. Because they do know, and they have some kind of clairvoyance. And so they seem similar to someone like the Cathay. They have this kind of knowledge, this ability that does not seem normal. It seems different. It seems like there's something to them. There's a reason why everybody they have these stories. The Tinker's debt is always paid, once for any simple trade, twice for freely given aid, thrice for any insult made. There's something to them. They have, there's a reason they built this reputation, and they definitely have some kind of ability or power or knack, something to them. They're very mysterious. I think I have a pretty good guess of where they came from. There's a scene where Kavoth is with Felurian, and they're doing one of their conversations where they're rhyming back and forth, and they're talking in what is it, poetic pentameter or whatever the word is. I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, he goes, Kavoth is talking to Flurry, and he goes, I frown. Still, it seems I should have seen more signs of those who walk between. So he's talking about, she's telling him that Fae creatures, the Fae, they venture out into the world. When the times are right, they go out into the human world and walk around. And he's like, still, it seems I should have seen more signs of those who walk between. Valerian shrugged. Most Fae are sly and subtle folk who step as soft as chimney smoke. Some go among your kind in shaden, glamoured as a pack mule laden, or wearing gowns to fit a queen. She gave a frank look. We know enough not to be seen. So glamoured as a pack mule laden, that makes me think of Tinkers that are going around. They got their pack mules. Bast has a glamour about him that makes him look human. Could be the same with Tinkers, that they have a glamour around them that makes them just kind of look like traveling tradesmen, but that would kind of give some kind of explanation for why they seem to have this knack or power to be able to tell you what you're going to need. And if you screw them over, it seems they have enough power to get revenge on you if you fuck them over, because people do not fuck with Tinkers.
It sounds like it's a traveling trade sales group with a really solid union plan.
Yeah.
Really good marketing, really solid marketing.
They got some really strong Teamsters behind them.
Clairvoyance is a prerequisite for the job, though. You got to be able to see the future. And
yeah, there is kind of like you said, they do seem like almost like a gypsy vagabond type of random people, but they're also travelers, kind of like the Rue. They seem to go back forever, so they also connect to early history of this world. And yeah, they garner respect out of the Rue. Don't hear so much about from other groups whether or not they.
It's clearly a worldwide thing, because when Kavoth meets the Tinker outside the mayor's place, he's like, "How's the road? Have you had any trouble?" And he's like, "Oh no, times are not near bad enough that someone would mess with a Tinker." And keep in mind, this is at a time where Cinder is with a group of bandits, and they are attacking caravans of guards guarding money, and they are attacking people who can physically defend themselves. And they are waylaying these people, stealing all the mayor's gold, and he is trying to defend against that. And then these Tinkers who are just traveling by themselves with a mule or horse and, a few packs, doesn't seem like they got a lot of defenses. People don't fuck with them.
Yeah, it's interesting because they fuck with Chronicler.
And people have a saying like, they'll pay you back thrice for any insult made. So between the fact that anything they tell you you're going to need, we see that it would have played a role, and people are scared to fuck with them, it lends credence that these are more powerful than you would expect on the surface, and they're not just these traveling vagabond bums that just have goods that they can slink back and forth. It seems there's more to them, and seems that they have some kind of power. And the way Florian talks about a glamour pack mule laden makes me think that Tinkers come from the Fae, and the reason that they can, bite back and come at you if you fuck with them is that they're from the Fae. They have power.
So it's like Amway and Mary Kay put together.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely don't seem like just random guys walking down the road with bags of goods, because otherwise you would think they would just be getting mobbed left and right every time they're just walking down the road, and people wouldn't have any fear of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, the idea and sort of the mystique itself, it's one of the things that, be kind of nice to have in our own
Oh, it's like
world.
a food truck, man. You ever go to a food truck? They got all kinds of different things. You have a hot sandwich, a cold drink, best of both worlds.
Yeah, especially if they could actually, tell you exactly what you're going to need. You just go up to them like, "Hey, what do I need, man?" Like, "Hey, you need XYZ." Like, yeah. Gonna need that bean burrito big time.
Side of guac.
It's gonna play a huge role.
Orange soda.
That guy that you don't like very much is going to be annoying you for the rest of the day. You're going to want some gas in there. A little gas in that tank, that bean burrito.
Eat that burrito and put you in the bathroom stall and saves you from getting ran over by a bus later on that day.
Maybe.
It's
got food poisoning.
Speaking of like the Tinkers, it's interesting, sort of the subtlety of seeing how they notch up the the anxious nature that the world has gotten into, where they're short on supply. If they had another chance to buy the salt, they would. It's those little things, just little stuff like that. It's great, man. And in terms of setting.
So was what they talked about the merchant that came through? Is that what you're talking about, Dan? That wasn't a Tinker, was it?
No, that's what what Tim's talking about is like they came through and the old Cobb didn't want to trade with him, felt the guy was, ripping people off, and now that, they didn't have access to those goods, now they really get a taste of how dark the times are in the world. And like when he's talking about like Taberlin having the amulet, Shep was like, "I'd give a good piece for such a thing these days." And they all kind of like nod their heads like, "Oh, yeah. You get a feel. This chapter really gives you a feel of that ominous feeling, like people feel like the axe is hanging over their head, and they're just kind of just putting their head down, going to work, but they're constantly thinking about like, when's the axe going to drop?" And you definitely get that feel in this chapter.
Hey, Dan, so speaking of Shep, at some point there's a mention of something bad happening like a week ago at Shep's house. Is that ever revisited?
No, they don't bring that back up again. They say people don't talk about it, so obviously, something happened, but yeah, they don't talk about it. One part I did want to mention was when they are talking about the Chandrian, Jake goes, They ain't demons. They were the first 6 people to refuse Telu's choice of the path, and he cursed them to wander the corners. So we'll come across the story of Telu from Trappist and about 20 some chapters or so, but this is the first mention of an origin story to the Chandrian, and I don't think it's actually an accurate origin story. I think the story Scarpy tells is accurate, but it plays into that the Talin religion that we're going to come across, and where they think that the Chandrian might have come from, and it makes sense based on kind of this origin story that the Talins have. So it kind of gives you like the introduction to an origin story of the Chandrian, and it's also going to gives you a little block for what the Talins are going to tell later on.
Just on a cursory sense, when you read this, the world just broadens. It just keeps broadening, and when you suddenly got religion and mythology, and it's just a couple little lines, and the world just keeps getting larger and larger. It's done subtly.
It's amazing how much stuff he packed into the first chapter. Yeah. I mean, he packed in so much stuff that comes to, stuff that's obviously hugely important throughout the whole books, little things about the Talins that are going to come into play with Trappist's story with the Talins, Chandrian. You get Taberlin and Grams and Tinkers. I mean, you get so much stuff packed into this first chapter. And I mean, the first time you go through it, you're not going to notice any of this stuff. But then when you go back through a second or third time, you're like, holy shit, this guy, every word this guy writes is going to play an important role in this book if you're looking for answers.
Well, yeah. And what the reason why I mentioned it the way I mentioned it just now is that on the first read through, you're just kind of feeling the world getting bigger and bigger and becoming more real. You know what I mean? Because it could just still be dudes in a bar, guy comes in, it's all cut up, there's this thing, blah, blah, blah. But before that, you're getting these little pepperings of the larger sense of the world and the fact that they're having trouble getting goods, and there's an ominous feel in the room, and you're just getting these feelings of it, and then you get a little bit more of like the reality of their situation. It's all so subtly done. I mean, that's one of my biggest compliments to him, and why I like it so much is it's that ability to write it in a subtle way and allow us to make the connections instead of beating us over the head.
Yeah, he's one of those authors that I believe that when you read through the books a second time, it's better than the first time, and that's rare because the second time you know what to expect, but he layers so many subtle things in that you just don't see the first time, that you have to go through a second time just to be able to see those
and
things.
Appreciate what was actually laid forth here. Yeah. No, the prologue definitely speaks to that. And my second read, or whatever which read through this is for book 2, it's the best I've ever read book 2. I'm amped, man. I'm smoking through it. It's 1,000 pages, but yeah, no, that's a massive compliment. He's decent at this whole thing.
Yeah, he's an okay writer. I think he's got a career. I think he's gonna make it.
If I can speak to it though, that's not to take it. What you guys are saying is not to take away from what I've experienced going through the first time, because it's one of the most interesting and action-packed stories. Even without, and I know that obviously having read it one time, that you missed all kinds of stuff, and there's little bits and pieces that you remember as you read through. And I didn't, for you guys that don't know, I didn't take notes or go back and try to figure out theories. Definitely didn't go to Reddit or any sites like that. So when I read it through the first time, I kind of plowed through the whole thing. And I was happy to do it, as much as, I'd come across something like, for instance, the Tinkers or the similarities of the stories between, say, Kavoth and Lanray. Yeah, Lanray. But I was happy to plow through it because the story's so interesting, and it just keeps on going too. There's never a dull moment, and if there ever is even a slightly dull, which usually ends up being an info dump or something that has some importance to the story, it doesn't matter because it picks right back up and into another interesting point in the story.
Yeah, it was the same for me. First time I went through it, it was 2011, and so I timed it so that I finished the first book the day before the second book came out. So
Nice.
I bought the second book the day it came out and was able to just jump straight from the first book to the second one, and then I read the second book in 2 days. I just plowed through it. I just knocked out like 500 pages a day, and then I've been now I've been sitting here for almost 10 years waiting on the third book. What's amazing is like in 2011 I decided, I was like, hey, let me check out A Song of Ice and Fire. And I plowed through those books and then immediately jumped into this series. And so I read book 5 of A Song of Ice and Fire and then book 2 of this series. I was done with both of them by July of 2011. And I'm like, these are the 2 greatest series of all time. I cannot wait to dive into the next book. And then it's like, well, you're gonna have a long wait, buddy. you just chose 2 authors that are gonna pick apart every word they write down on paper. It's gonna be a long wait.
Glutton for punishment, I guess, Dan.
Yeah, I was not expecting both series. I would still be waiting 9 years later for the next book. But as long as they knock it out of the park, it'll be worth the wait.
Well, since we're still early enough in the story to where we remember what not the prologue, but whatever the part before that is. I don't even know what it's called, where Rothfuss is talking about who he owes his thanks to. And I thought about it because I listened to it today, and I'm like, he says, and thanks to my dad who instilled in my head, if I'm going to do something, to take my time and do it right. And I'm just like, take your time. It's been a long time. Yeah. You must be really doing this right.
Well, hey, first two books are off the charts.
Didn't disappoint.
As long as third book's, if the third book's really good, I do not care about the wait. It will. The only thing is, after 9 years, like the pressure has to be immense on this guy because you cannot lay an egg now. If you're gonna lay an egg, put the book out in a year, get it over with. You build this much anticipation, man, you can't lay an egg anymore. I don't think he will, but the pressure's got to be immense.
Yeah, I just hope he doesn't change his method, man. As long as he sticks with what he did the first couple times around, should work out.
Well, the good thing is, like, people don't change much over like 20 years. People remain relatively the same. There's not much change in a person over a 20-year period. So I'm sure his writing will be exactly. So
just send him an email. Send him an email and say, hey, come on, this time around, just do a good job. We're looking forward to it, and then he'll do it.
Yeah,
right.
Should
be that easy.
Patrick, we think you're a good writer, and we think you can do an excellent job. So get in there and really give it your all and give it a good go.
Postscript, don't disappoint us.
I hope he reads your email and then he decides not to write the book and he blames you guys for your terrible emails that you're sending.
I told you to send it. I'm not sending it.
Oh, thank you.
I'll send
thank you for that.
I can do it.
So then we get the interruption of their story, and Carter comes busting in the door, and it really ramps up the scene as it's chaotic. He throws this giant spider-looking thing with no mouth, no face really. It's just gray, razor-sharp claws, tosses on the table. He's all cut up. People are like, what the fuck is that? And he opens it up, and you get the introduction to the Scrael, and it just ramps things up. You go from this bar scene, these guys are telling stories, having a good time, and then like, what the fuck is this thing?
Well, don't
right out of
don't
nowhere.
Forget about old Cobb. He just had to keep saying, "Hey, I told you, don't do that. I told you." Yeah. He's immediately pointing fingers.
Told you so.
What a douche.
That's exactly what you want to hear while you're all cut up and just barely survived, and you just lost your horse. I told you.
You just got your horse just got ripped to shreds right in front of you, and you nearly died yourself. Yeah, I want to hear old Cobb tell me he told me this would happen. Fucking douchebag.
Yeah, old Cobb.
What's so interesting looking back is we never see the Scrael again. Right? So we hear about...
Well, yeah, we do. We get him 2 chapters later.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, yeah.
But I mean, it's part of a larger sense, a larger threat and everything else. But yeah, it jumps everything off after all the table setting, all the scene setting, and then boom. It's so great too, where it's like the little details about it being sort of like pottery, and it's like it's hollow. It doesn't have any organs. It's like razor blades. It's like, Jesus. I mean, in your mind's eye, you're just like, dude, what the fuck? What the fuck are these things?
So
man?
isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't it? We find out pretty quick here that Kavoth is the only one who knows what this thing is.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, you get from Cobb. He's like, they think someone says it's a spider. And, I don't like spiders or whatever. And Cobb's like, spiders don't get big as pigs. You know what this is. He looked around, making eye contact with each of them. It's a demon. We find out Carter was lucky to survive this. His horse fell on it, cracked it, and he was able to somehow finish it off. But when you get Kavoth and Bass talking about it, you're like, 4 Scrael could have killed everybody in this town. So Carter was extremely lucky to survive this thing. And they think it's a demon, which isn't 100% correct, but it's close to right, where it's better for them to just assume it's a demon, because then, they'll do the right things for the wrong reasons. But so yeah, they think it's a demon, and then Kavoth, he jumps in with he jumps in and basically is like, that's a Scrael, and they're like, you know what this yeah, here it is. The innkeeper's eyes were distant. Scrael, he said distractedly. I thought the mountains. Scrael, Jake broke in. Black and body of God, Coat. You've seen these things before? So Kavoth sees it, and then he recognizes it as one of the Scrael, and he mentions that he didn't think they would make it over the mountains this soon. So obviously Kavoth, he knows what these things are. He's seen them before. This is not the first time he's came across Scrael, and he thinks that they came over the mountains. The only mountains we really know of that we've came across are the Stormwall Mountains, where he meets the Adim. So that's to the west, way west of the university, and where the Adim are located. So, but you get the feeling that Kavoth is responsible for these things, or at least he's known about these things, and he just did not expect them to be there that soon. But he clearly knows more than he lets on to.
Well, and the way it comes out, it was unintentional, and he brings attention to himself through doing it, and then has to backpedal and try to. And you see it also, it's subtle, but when towards so a little bit after what Dan was just talking about, as they're both sort of like, what the hell is this thing, and everything else, Coat takes a quick look. He sort of distracts them in some way where they're all looking at it on the table, and he's looking at all their faces to try to see, like, it's trying to like read them. You know what I mean? It seemed like he's trying to me at least, that said, that kind of gave me a hint that he's hiding, because we don't have any reason necessarily to believe that up to this point, right? That he's actually in hiding. But this sort of gives a hint that, like, these little subtle things are sort of giving a hint that he let something out he shouldn't have. Now he's getting attention on him. And there's like these really little things that it feeds toward the point. And then we find it out within the chapter, but it's kind of interesting how he gets us there.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely you first get a little bit of the hint when he tells the story about the Tinkers. He corrects them on the poem, and they all look at him like, this dude's fucking talking. So he clearly keeps to himself, and then when he lets slip, he knows what the Scrael are. He quickly backpedals. So yeah, if you're going through the first time, you start to realize pretty quickly that Coat is hiding something. You don't know exactly what yet, but obviously, yeah, we know he's hiding who he is exactly.
And we also know, Dan, that he's only been in town for a year, or about a year.
About 2
Okay.
years.
I thought they said a year.
Yeah. He's been there, in the range of around 2 years. Less than 2 years, but in that range.
Yeah, the way they sort of intro that's kind of cool too, where it's like, it takes a while to get integrated into a town. They kind of don't trust you. You're still that guy from somewhere else. You're the innkeeper. That's what they call you. They don't call you by name for the most part, right? Yeah, it's kind of a cool way to also talk that out.
Yeah, he'd been in town for a year or so, but it's basically been almost 2 years since shit went down that he went into hiding, and he's been there in between a year and 2 years. But then we get, once they believe it's a demon, then we get a piece of their religion, and how they believe that they're supposed to deal with demons. And it was like the demons fear 3 things: the name of God, cold iron, and clean fire. And when they said the name of God, Coat winces. Like, fucking, you get the sense that he's like, morons, superstitious idiots. But like, it clearly, fire and iron seem to be things that definitely hurt these things, especially iron. He just puts iron against the skin of it, and the thing cracks and kind of splinters apart. And so we start to get a sense that there's the religion around these things, and there's accuracy to the belief system. But we know that their religion is not exactly accurate. So we know that we start to get a sense that someone has built in stories that these people are telling, passing down on. They tell them a lot of children's stories, and a lot of rhymes, and a lot of religious texts. And these stories have instructions for how to deal with things that are accurate, and people do these things, but they don't know why they're supposed to do them. They do them for the wrong reasons, but they're doing the right things. So you get that first sense of people are building in like an instruction manual into this world to let people know how to deal with some of these crazy fucking creatures that they're going to come across.
And Kvoth revisits what that is later on when he's up in his room with Bass, telling him how he buried it, how he didn't. Quick question along those lines: didn't he told Bass that he made sure that nobody kept a souvenir, so to speak? But then, do we find out later that he kept a piece of its leg? I kind of remember something like that.
Yeah, he definitely did. He used it to lure in the other Scrael. That's how he lured him in so he could kill him.
Yeah. Okay. So that's probably why you don't, because they and why you bury him so deep, so on and so forth, because it attracts other ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems that's at least a partial reason for it, is that it will attract more of them. Then so then they end up burying it. They go by the poem that we learned. They bury it to certain depth. They use a certain type of wood. They take care of it in the right way for the wrong reasons. Then Bass comes in. Coat relays what's happened to Bast. Bast immediately, you get a sense of how dangerous Scrael are. We know Bast is got some fucking powers. He's a powerful fey creature, and when he hears the Scrael, he's ready to immediately turn and run the fuck out of the place. Like, it was like his first instinct was to take off. So it gives you a sense of the Scrael are not to be fucked with. They're dangerous. And so Carter was super freaking lucky.
Yeah, it's also cool how Bass is like, okay, so like, where are the rest of them? They don't travel alone. And he even talks about, 4 of them could go through the whole town and just murder everyone.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's when you start to realize, oh shit, he really did get lucky. like extraordinarily lucky.
They're no joke.
So did you guys, I may be late coming here, but did you guys, the one of the scariest things about the Scrael, and we said something about it, but the razor feet and how it crawled up on the horse and like, I really, the visual of that was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Something that had.
I don't like a spider that is like a quarter the size of a penny. I don't want to like hit it with my hand and smash it. Like I want a shoe in my hand to smash it. So yeah, a pig-sized spider with razor feet and no eyes and no mouth with no blood. Like it's like a mushroom on the inside.
That you can't
like,
squish.
Yeah, I don't know.
That you can't squish.
You can't squish. It's like pottery. So it's not like you can just step on it. Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. It's not. That's not an ideal enemy for me. I would run, and I would probably die because it doesn't seem like I'd be fast enough to outrun one of these.
So
things.
along those lines, man, I would just point out that within the first chapter, Rothfuss has introduced the scariest horror creature, and I like horror movies, so I've seen a lot of them. Nothing compares to a Skrael so far.
No, that's just sounds gnarly.
It's pretty good.
Sounds gnarly. Doesn't sound
pretty good
fun.
as horror goes. Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
One thing I wanted to bring up, I forgot to bring up as we're moving into Bass. He mentions he called himself Coat. He had chosen the name carefully when he came to this place. He had taken a new name for most of the usual reasons and for a few unusual ones as well, not the least of which was the fact that names were important to him. That's obviously huge. That's going to play in big time. What are the usual reasons? You're in hiding, that you don't want to be found. You want to keep your name secret. What are the unusual ones? Why is he changing his name? Obviously when you hear about names and you hear how powerful they are, and you see when he talks about Denna constantly changing her name, and he tells that to Elodin. Elodin like goes into panic mode. It's like Fella changed her name. She wouldn't do that. And he's like, no, not Fella. And he's like, do you change your name? He's like, no, it's not me. And so like Elodin was in panic at the idea that they would change their true name. And then he finds out, it's your calling name. Oh, okay. And then he backs up. So we know there's major power in changing your name, and there's a sense that it's dangerous to do something like that. It would be idiotic. But Kvothe has, and he's changed his name, and he says he's did it for the unusual reasons, so that would make you think that it has something to do with what made Elodin panic, that he has done something like that.
Yeah, I'm interested in the last line of that paragraph where it says he's done it for not the usual reasons, not the least of which names are important to him. So Coat, the name Coat itself, maybe he's shielding himself from the cold. I don't know. It's
Well, here's the biggest piece we know about what Coat means. When there's a scene where Coat's talking to Master Kilvin, and I believe it's right after Coat rescued Fella from the fire in the fishery. If you guys, I'm sure you guys remember the story. It's a massive story in the first book. So fishery catches on fire, and Coat saves Fella, and then when he goes back to the fishery, Kilvin brings him into his office. Kilvin says, Chayin, Bayin, Aiden, Coat. And Kvothe only gets part of it, 7 years, but admits to not knowing the meaning of Coat. And then Kilvin translates it for us. He says it's expect disaster every 7 years. So this suggests that Coat means disaster, because we already know Chan means 7. So he changed his name to Disaster.
Like a wrestler, like Master of Disaster. Like he's trying to prepare himself for something good.
Yeah.
It's like Earthquake.
Yeah, that's one way to take it. I think it's likely a more darker, a darker path than a fun wrestler name. But yeah, that at least means something. You change your name, you're gonna pick any name you want, and you change it to Disaster.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I would say the foreboding is also ratcheted up with the prologue, with the fact that he sighs without knowing it. If he knew he was humming, he would have stopped himself. He sees the stars and closes the shutters to cut himself off or distance himself from the stars. He's putting himself in this place, man. He's punishing himself. Ooh, the Punisher.
Oh, maybe that.
No, but I mean, clearly he feels bad for what he did. Obviously, we know very little at this point. But yes, it does seem very. There's a heavy weight on this young man, Coat, who sometimes is young, sometimes is old. We also get that on the same page where he's turning the bottles, and it's making him seem much younger. Certainly not yet 30.
Yeah, it seems like it goes back and forth. Like he'll be sitting there doing one thing, and then all of a sudden he'll look at that box, and he turns into this wrinkly not old man, but a stressed and weather-worn person.
It talks about a few times easing a few tired lines from his face, or these tired lines come back. And it's interesting. This will play out more, but he keeps doing this. Well, I mean, he even goes young for an innkeeper, young for a man with so many tired lines remaining on his face.
Yeah, you get the first few mentions.
How old is he?
That we'll find out he's probably in the range of around 25, but we don't know exactly because we don't know how long he was in the Fae with Florian, how much he aged there, and had he gone back. So we don't know. But in that range of like 25, less than 30. But we get our first like kind of just sprinkled in a little bit about the difference between Coat, the innkeeper, versus Kavoth, the hero. There's a huge dynamic between his personality and his appearance as Coat, and his personality and his appearance as Kavoth. And you don't know he's Kavoth yet at this point, but you start to get a sense that he's in hiding, and there's a difference between who he's portraying to be versus who he actually is. And that's obviously going to play a huge role as we move along.
We seem to get a little sample of him opening up, and he even has like a little fun with Bast, right? They kind of joke around a little bit.
Yeah.
Until that, he is not that guy at all. He's not joking. He's barely speaking. He's depressed, until that moment. And their little back and forth, the little nickname, Reshi, and all that stuff. It definitely widens him to a huge degree. And just the existence of Bast completely changes everything.
Yeah. And, he has his interplay with Bast. And obviously you get with Bast, you get that there's something different about him. He's, you start to get the sense that Bast is not the same. He's got a weird gait. And then when Kavoth is shooing him away, he's saying, what was it? Begone demon, Coat said, switching to a thickly accented Timic through half a mouthful of stew. Teus antasa eha. Bast burst into startled laughter and made an obscene gesture with one hand. Coat swallowed and changed language. Aroi Tedena Layan. So, Begone Demon and then Teos and Tasa Eha. We come across that again when he's in Tarbean, and they're playing their Winter's Festival game where they're trying to banish demons, and people are dressing up like demons, harassing the people in the town, and they say that Teos and Tasa Eha, and that gets the guys to stop messing with them, which probably translates to Telu banish you or Telu protect me.
So he's telling Bast to leave. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, he says like "be gone, demon," and then something that translates to Telu banish you or Telu protect me. It's basically, it's at this part is implying that he's like a demon. He's obviously from the Fae. We know that, but he's giving these like. He gives you a clue that there's something up with Bast. He's not the same as a normal
Since
person.
We're talking about it, he even goes as far as glamour be banished.
Yes. Yeah, he calls him a glamour. Yep.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and then he's got the weird gait, and so, Bast is different. He's not the same, and Rothfuss just kind of, gives you a little sense of that. You're not going to expect that he's going to be walking around with cloven hooves here in a few chapters, but you get a little sense that there's a little something different about him.
That is one of those circumstances. I mean, when you do go back, you start to appreciate and realize there are no wasted words, man. Like even that little strange casual grace ends up meaning something, and he's always hinting at something. he's layering on, and you start to realize that. And Fitz talked about this. When you do read through, you even know it subconsciously, or maybe even somewhat consciously, that there's something here to connect, but you just keep going. You know what I mean? I mean, it happened to me plenty of times too.
Well, you can't. There's pieces that are missing. You can't put it together yet, but he puts it there on purpose so that you can get these little pieces to build on as you go. But if you're just looking at that specific spot, especially as a first-time reader, if you're looking at that specific spot or that specific story or that specific word, it means something, and you know it means something, but you don't know what yet.
Well, even clearer. I mean, a clearer sense is like we talked about Taborlin the Great, and then Loden does virtually the same thing. And you're reading it, and you're like, oh, this mirrors something I read earlier. And there's little lines that get repeated. Even sometimes they're out of context, but then they do still get repeated. So you do start to, you're assessing that memory or accessing that memory, and then you're also sort of applying it in some ways. In other ways, you're just like, I know there's something to this. He's hinting at me. He's telling me that.
Yeah, little synchronicities between different characters and different stories, definitely.
Yeah, one of the other parts I want to bring up is because right after Bass takes off, then he starts looking at his thrice locked box, which is obviously important to the story. We still don't know what's in it, and doesn't appear that Kavoth can even access it. He's extremely frustrated by it. He has Bass try to figure out a way into the box, and Bass can't figure it out, and it doesn't seem that Kavoth can either. So it seems like, in that Kavoth dynamic that, we'll obviously dive deeper into. It seems like there's something that's changed about him that he's not even able to get inside his own box. If it's his box. Could be that he stole it from someone, but it seems like it's his, and he's got his stuff inside it, and he can't even get in it anymore for some reason. Something's wrong with his power, with his abilities, with his name. There's something wrong with him that he can't even get in his own box.
Maybe it's Dennis' box. He could never get in that box either.
No, yeah, he never gets in there. Yeah.
I love the way this is worded. Is so freaking great because it puts you in this place and the uncomfortable nature of his frustration. In particular, a skilled observer might notice there was something his gaze avoided, the same way you avoid meeting the eye of an old lover at a formal dinner or that of an enemy sitting across the room in a crowded alehouse late at night. Coat tried to relax, failed, fidgeted, sighed, shifted in his seat. I mean, it's a whole thing, man. He's trying not to look at it, but the presence is making him uncomfortable. It's fucking great, man. It's great. It's great. So I mean, it puts us in the room, and he does describe the room a little bit at the beginning, where it's almost surprising to a degree. I love stuff like this. When you walk in a room and it's like there's nothing on the walls, there's nothing on the floor. You don't think about any of these things unless they point it out. Right. So we're like, all right, he's in this room. He's not a guy that like gives a shit about what the room looks like and everything. And then he's got this box that's worth a frickin' fortune, like ridiculously extravagant. And so again, this to place that in this room with this guy that's in this position that we understand at this point, at least to a degree. Again, I don't even know where that takes us. It broadens our expectations. And it kind of puts us on our heels to a degree of like, I don't know the significance. Clearly, there's a massive significance to this box.
Well, one of the important aspects of it, it's made of Roa, which Roa comes up a lot. Roa, it's a rare, heavy wood, dark as coal, and smooth as polished glass, prized by perfumers, alchemists. A piece the size of your thumb was easily worth gold. To have a chest made of it went far beyond extravagance. Some of the similarities is when they talk about Roa, they talk about it, a citrus smell, and we get the Folly mounting board is made out of Roa, and it has a citrus smell to it. It has a smell to it. The Cathay tree, he's when he goes and meets the Cathay and he sees the tree, it's got a smell of smoke and spice and leather and lemon. Again, lemon, citrus smell. The Lackless box, he says it had a lemon smell. The Thrice Locked box has a citrus aroma. So there's something to do with Roa or with the Cathay tree. The fact that they all have this citrus smell, it's extremely valuable wood, that you have these items that are locked away in these things, or the Cathay is locked in this tree. Kavoth can't get in his thrice locked box. Nobody can get in the lackless box. He puts that sword, he puts it on a mounting board made of Roa. Something to Roa. We don't know exactly what, but there is something to it. And there's got to be some kind of power to it that they would be hiding these things in Roa, or maybe Cathay tree is not exactly Roa, it's a type of Roa that has some kind of power. Something to it, though.
I wonder, now that you bring it up, I wonder if you have to say a particular word to be able to get the sword off the mounting board. You know, I'm thinking about it because the boxes that people can't get into, the tree that's holding the Cathay. I wonder if like that itself is like a trapping mechanism or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know. We haven't seen anybody try to take it off, but I think there's something to Roa. I don't think that Rothfuss was right that he would describe a citrus smell with all of these different things if there was nothing to it.
It's great. I love the idea of it because he's done this in so many ways where, you know, there's magical power there's magical power in all these different elements, and it has application in all these different ways and different sort of mediums throughout the world. I like the idea that it's contained in something that, you know, is part of the world itself, in a tree, in a wood.
But it begs the question, what's inside the box?
Yeah, don't know. I mean, maybe his sword, maybe his cloak, all of his, you know, his loot, all the things that make him him.
His name,
yeah, maybe his name. That's the big thing. Is maybe his name. He locked his name in a box in Rowood that he can't even access it. I don't know. It's the $1 million question. There's not a lot of evidence that points one way or another. It's all a guessing game. I don't know. I'm very curious what's inside it. There's a lot of people that think he locked his name in that box, and that's why I can't access. Similar to Ajax locking the name of the moon, or Jax in Hespe's story locking the name of the moon in that box. There's a lot of people that believe that's what Kavoth did to his name as well.
I kind of like the idea that somebody did it and gave it to him. Like, it's almost like it's a challenge, but it could also be an insult, you know?
Yeah, like just torture.
Yeah.
Just torture him. Yeah, I don't know. That's obviously a huge book 3 question. There's not, I not noticed any evidence that would give away what's inside the box through these first 2 books, but that's a huge question.
Tim, can I expand on that? Because it'd be like a catch-22. Kavoth's name is inside the box, and unless he's got his name, unless he's Kavoth, he can't unlock the box. But he can't unlock the box because his name's inside there. It's a whole deal.
I dig it.
I like it.
I dig it. I like the idea that if that's what happened, someone gave him the box, they should say the line, "Good luck, fuckface."
Okay.
It's in the box. It's in his head. What's in the box?
That's a reference to Seven,
classic.
The movie Seven, for those youngsters.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
It's not for you, it's for the youngsters.
If you didn't get that reference, turn the podcast off. You're off. You're too young
So
for
that's
this.
Redheads. You're not allowed to.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
No more.
I'm sorry. I mean, as we go along, I'm gonna be banning a lot of people. It's just, you know,
at some point, Dan,
just how he
it's
rolls.
just gonna be a part of the part of the show.
At some point, Dan, you're gonna be pissed off at something or other. You're gonna name yourself, and you're gonna be out too, and then we won't have a show. What then?
Yeah, I mean, it's the risk. It's a risk.
There's going to be a realization that Dan's eliminating his own type of person and just takes off the headphones.
You can't have me starting.
Away.
You can't have me starting a podcast. Give me the power to banish people and not expect me to use it.
I don't remember anybody giving you that power. You just started off with gingers and some kind of hatred.
Yeah, well, I have the power now. So
he
who creates.
You know, other than that, you know, there's as move to the latter part of of the chapter, it's mainly you're getting a lot of just kind of more information about this ominous feeling to the world. You hear about there's a penitent king. You hear about there's a war, a third levy tax. So you get the sense that there's a civil war going on. People are getting the screws put to them. They're getting taxed through the roof. And that the world is starting to they're on the precipice of the world just kind of falling apart and collapsing in bad times.
So something that maybe just a little bit skimmed over here is this crazy Martin guy that digs a well in his basement and he's grown barley. I think this guy knows something that nobody else knows.
Yeah, everybody else plants beans, and he's over there like, I'm getting drunk.
Crazy Martin. Crazy Martin, man. He's got a trick up his sleeve, I think.
Yeah.
He knows something.
Yeah.
Fitz wants to find an allegiance to someone that doesn't fit into society. I can
see myself trying to dig a well in my basement someday.
Exactly.
When all the chips are down and the brakes are beating the boys, I'm going to the basement.
Yeah, and so we find out Fitz had a massive sewage problem. The whole family had to move into a hotel for a while. They had to move into a new house. Or he finds oil. Yeah, who knows? So, but so actually there was something we kind of went past. We talked about this, but I like the way it's put here where they talk again about, Rothfuss talks again about how intense Coates' depression, I guess you could call it, is with the box and when he's sitting there. And I think it's fantastic where it's that those moments of the real pain comes back in his face and it sort of, he regains all the lines that the simple pleasures of the day had slowly smoothed away. I like, especially for a moment, fierce longing and regret warred across his face. It just keeps upping the ante that he's in this fucking awful position. And I like, again, he sighed again without knowing it. You ever sigh without knowing it? Sounds terrible. Sounds fucking terrible.
I do it a lot when, people start talking and it's just...
I heard Dan do it when you started talking about what you were talking about just now, Tim.
Nice.
Yeah, I sighed like 3 times in the middle of that sentence. But yeah, it's you definitely you're getting into that. Coat is not happy in his place. He's kind of methodically just going about the day, doing his chores and everything, but something weighing on him. But when he can kind of escape it a little bit, like a little bit of that pressure is relieved, and he looks younger, looks back to himself, but you could tell the weight of the world.
Yeah, I mean,
on his
it's
shoulders.
especially the reason why I bring it up. He's sitting in a room by himself. Once Bass leaves him, he's just fucking. You're there, left with yourself, man. No matter where you go, you're left with yourself, and it fucking sucks to be him. Seems like.
Yeah, and it's something that keeps coming up that we're shown that Kavoth is not himself when he's Coat. You know, that thing where he's behind the doors. He's somebody else, and you keep seeing these little flashes. You keep seeing these little hints that Kavoth is somewhere in there, but right now he's Coat, and that's it. He can't break out of it.
So, by the way, I mean, it's kind of simple, but on a first read through, it's a big deal. At least I think it would be to me. They mentioned the penitent king, so we get. I mean, that's huge for the world.
Is that the guy in the war?
Yeah, but I mean, there's a king in the world that changes how we see this world we're reading about right in that moment, right? Sort of building it out. And it does talk about how they have the war going and, taxation. I like the mention they haven't had a 3 bleeder year in living memory. So yeah, they're getting taxed multiple, they're getting hit multiple times. And just that mention of the king, it's, that's giving you a feeling of how this world works to a greater degree, sort of deepening that understanding.
Yeah, it gives you that medieval feel to it. The way they bounce around and everything, like some of it seems like after the Industrial Revolution age, and some of aspects of it seem, before that. But it puts you in that, in the some parts feel like in the, 1400s, some like in the 1800s. It's got a lot of similarities to our worlds, but A lot of it kind of bounces around, like just, some things, certain metals and stuff like that weren't discovered until, maybe the 1700s in our world. So, and so you get a dynamic that it seems like he kind of combined a lot of different eras into one.
And also, Tim, with that mention of the penitent king, it's with the name of the series, it makes you wonder: is this the king that he kills?
I would venture the guess no, because he's already in hiding, and I would assume he's already killed a king.
Yeah, I don't know.
Certainly, in his story of the King Killer Chronicles, he's killed a king, and in the story of what put him in hiding. So I would assume, in the story we know Roderick is king. That's the king of the Four Corners or whatever, of the king event. So you would assume that he's killed a king, and this penitent king is
so the
someone
Four
else.
Corners is that where they live?
That's the general area of where they live, like Modag and Ventus and all those areas.
Is it possible that Roderick is the penitent king?
Could be. He could be the penitent king.
Means someone who's righted their wrongs. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Repentant. Yeah, pretty much.
Repented.
Okay.
So, but at this point, there's we don't know anything about him. But yeah, it's penitent is like having regret or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe he had his like come to Jesus moment, and that's why they call him the penitent king. Or maybe maybe he did something that he regret that he's trying to make right, and that's why they call him penitent king. But we don't know enough yet.
But I'll just say that
to venture.
I would guess at least that Roderick is not wasting words here.
You mean Rothfuss?
When I say Roderick, Rothfuss, Patrick Rothfuss is not
Yeah.
wasting words.
No, I think there will 100% be a reason that will be clear when book 3 is over. We'll surely know who the penitent king is, and we'll know why he's called.
You guys want to just stop the podcast here, and we'll pick it up after book 3 comes out, so we can talk about it a little more fluently.
Yeah. No, I think that would be a major letdown.
Jokes.
I don't have really a lot more to say on the chapter. It just basically kind of ends with people telling the rumors. Nobody believes their story about the demon. They think it's the drunks, and the priest, and Coates the new guy. So who can believe him? Nobody believes it, but they still, everybody, seems to feel that ominous.
And Shep's Carter's all cut up. There's at least that.
So they think something's happened, but they don't believe, it was demons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's kind of how our world works as well, man. People would rather just, pretend the problem's not there. It's not our problem.
If you tell me like some guys that hang out at the bar and they tell me they saw a demon, I'm going to be like, yeah, they saw a demon. Sure thing, buddy.
Well, the question is, are you going to go into the bar, Dan?
Yeah, I want to join them for some drinks. Whatever got them to see some demons, let me get a little sip of that.
Some LS, something laced.
I caught that reference though, Tim. What is it when they're in the woods, or would you go out? What is it? Oh, it's Abinthy. It's Abinthy talking to Arladin and Kvoth's mom, saying, they're talking about the Chandrian, and you may not believe in him, but would you go out into the woods? Very good, Tim. Very good.
Peppering it in there.
I like it.
Seasoning.
Well done. Okay, well, we got coming up, we got Kvoth going out into the woods and taking care of a few Skraelings himself. And meeting Chronicler.
Yeah, we're gonna meet Chronicler. We're gonna meet the bandits. One of them's a skin dance. Becomes a skin dancer. We see the first Tinkers. We get some people traveling the bar. We get the discovery that Coat is Kvoth. Kvoth goes out. He fights the Skrael. We get the introduction. Kvoth meeting Chronicler, bringing him to the bar. So we got some good stuff here, especially chapter 3. There's some good stuff to dig into that we're going to come across.
Does anybody else think Skin Dancer would have been a really good name for strippers?
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Should have went with that.
Leave it to Rothfuss.
I like
Leave
it.
it to Rothfuss to.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain that there is a strip club called Skin Dancer.
There should be.
It's probably where Rothfuss used to go while he was writing the book.
That makes sense. And there's
there's probably some guy that like Googles Skin Dancer looking for the club and gets annoyed because it's all references to this book and like, what the fuck is
Old
this nerd shit?
zombie-looking guys.
Trying to find the strip club.
The images just has a bunch of zombies.
There's a sign on the
Need
door.
an address, not this stupid fantasy crap that these kids are reading these days.
There's a sign on the door, no sympathy.
Yeah.
The whole world just got built out from
Yeah.
this one strip club that Rothfuss used to frequent.
All right, well we'll have all that for you guys next week, so be sure to come back and join us again.
All right, peace out, folks.
Good night.
Right on. See it.